Hello, everybody. Welcome back to the third and final day of the Seattle Indies Expo Online. I'm back again here with Catherine. Yeah, day 3. We're ending it with a bang, and I am super excited. Now it's time for us to check out Unnatural Disaster, and we are going to be joined by the wonderful Stephazoid, who's back to host with us again today as well, and Kevin, the developer of the game. Thank you so much for being here with us, guys.
Thanks for having me.
So Kevin, can you give us just, a quick rundown? What is Unnatural Disaster?
Sure. Yeah, that's a good question. So I like to describe it as not a city builder, but like an anti-city builder or a city destroyer. So
I'm thinking Rampage.
It's part like an action-packed disaster simulator and part like a brain-scratching puzzle game. And I mean, I guess the best way to do it is to just show what it's about. So.
Yeah, that's, you know what? You are totally right. And I love that you called it an anti-city builder, because that is literally the exact phrase I put in my notes while I was preparing. So glad we're on the same page. I was like, it's like a city builder, but you're destroying everything. So it's an anti-city builder. We're going to check the game out in just a second right here with Kevin. But before we do that, let's take a look at a trailer for it so we can get a little preview of what's to come.
Man, I love that newsroom.
Right. I'm so excited to check this game out. Let's jump into some gameplay and take a look. Here we go.
Wonderful.
Unnatural Disaster.
I am excited for the anti-city building.
Yeah, I just want to watch
Kevin,
everything be destroyed.
Kevin, where did this idea come from originally?
Well, I'm sure if anybody who's ever played SimCity has probably had that moment where they like save off their city and then just like go hog wild on it with all the disasters in the game. And I was one of those people for sure. So this is just kind of the exploration of like taking that fun core idea and just expanding it out and seeing what else you could do with it, and just exploring all the different fun ways you could interact with it and make it more of a cerebral experience.
And what you mentioned, it was also a bit of a puzzle game. What are the puzzle aspects of this? Like, what's the difficulty versus just like the fun rage of destroying things?
Well, I mean, actually, what I'm showing right now is kind of the core of of answering that question. So a lot of the game levels. So each time you're like pitted against a city. And in this case, the different objectives lean into it in different ways. So in this case, you have to destroy a certain building with a certain kind of damage, except that the city is like people are smart, right? They're like figuring out ways to kind of stop you from doing that. So in this case, there's this like wind turbine that like sucks up your tornadoes and dissipates them. So we have to like kind of get that out of the way before our tornado can like attack this building and deal the wind damage we need to win.
Cool.
I noticed at the beginning there was a oh, go ahead.
No, go.
There was a forecast, and I thought that was really interesting. I'm really curious to learn more about how the forecast plays into the gameplay and the puzzle aspects of the game.
Yeah, so the narrative of the game is told around this idea of the verbs of a news broadcast. So there's news broadcasts that happen intermittently with each day, and that kind of tells the story of the game. And then in between, there's the forecast view shows you all the different cities in your region, and you kind of follow them along through multiple days of gameplay. So you'll see these levels and like kind of learn their personalities, and then as you play the game, they get stronger and kind of learn how to be better against you, and you kind of see them progress and get stronger as well. So
you pretty much answered my question.
And also this gameplay that we're seeing now is an example of another objective. So this one is just kind of a pure destruction level. So in this case, the city has built a bunch of different defenses, and you just kind of have to work your way around the defenses and figure out how to level as much of the city as possible to reclaim it for nature, which, if I didn't mention before, was like you're kind of playing as nature, and then so civilization is the enemy. They're the ones encroaching on your territory, and you're trying to reclaim it with these trees and with the natural disasters that you're unleashing.
We have a question from chat. Alchemist Joker asks, were there any types of destruction that you wanted to add that ended up being too challenging?
Not necessarily too challenging to implement or anything like that. Mostly just trying to figure out the right way to balance the gameplay. So one of the things that you'll see as we're playing the game is that all these disasters kind of like play into each other and have some influence on each other. And that becomes really critical in some of the later stages of the game. So like, you might have noticed that when there was some fire, a tornado that goes through that fire picks it up and becomes a fire whirl. And that way you can deal fire damage in areas where maybe... Yeah, exactly. So that way you can deal fire damage in areas that are defended against fire. So being able to like pick things that kind of played into each other and interacted with each other in like a logical way was a big part of it. And so everything else just kind of like has to flow from that. And there's a lot of disasters in here that come from your other disasters. So like you don't spawn, you can't spawn a tsunami, but there's tsunamis in the game, and you'll see that at some point later. Let's see.
So I like that. The idea that there are natural disasters that just don't exist on your toolkit, but you have to utilize other things. It's part of the puzzle, right? And I think that's an excellent implementation of just the problem solving that we're seeing in this game against you. And the city continuously rebuilds and protects itself, correct?
Yeah, that's a really good point. So all the cities in the game are procedurally generated, but they're also like playing against you as you play against them. So they'll grow and then kind of encroach on the territory that's like trees and stuff already. But they also rebuild from the damage that you deal to them. So there's also a time-based element to it. So you can't just like rest on your laurels and do some damage and, count on that sticking. You have to actually like stay on top of this city and keep pounding it, or else you're not gonna win.
And can you say again, what purpose do the trees have in the level?
Yeah, so the trees are how you generate your energy in the game, and the energy powers these strikes. So every tree you plant is like a fifth of the wheel of a strike, and once you have a strike, you can unleash one disaster. So as the game progresses, you can unlock additional strikes, so you can make more and more powerful disasters. And the way you power up your disasters is pretty straightforward. You just like spawn them next to each other. So like if you might have noticed that there, if you spawn a tornado next to another tornado, they just kind of like suck up into each other and become a bigger tornado. Like if you've ever seen the movie Twister, when the two tornadoes come together and become one, that was like a key inspiration for me.
Okay. Were there any other media inspirations that you had other than the movie Twister?
Oh yeah, I mean, like I grew up with all those kind of cheesy disaster movies in the 90s, like Twister and Dante's Peak and Independence Day, stuff like that was like a key inspiration for me making this game. I just wanted to capture the feeling of like trolling your SimCity crossed with the fun of like those cheesy disaster movies, when it was less about just like how sad disasters made you feel and just like, hey, this is interesting, this is fun, it's SFX spectacle.
Stephazoid, do you have a favorite natural disaster?
Oh, geez. I think that earthquakes are one of my favorites, and that maybe that's because like I grew up in California, so we actually got to experience them a little bit, so they were a little interesting to me. We didn't get like massive earthquakes that were just world shattering, but they're still a fascinating, they just impact so many different things that as far as natural disasters go, I think earthquakes are one of the most fascinating to me.
Fire, burn it all down.
All the right, so Meg's a pyro.
No, what? Not me.
No, what are you talking about?
On that note, though, I want to know if, when working on this game, did you have a favorite natural disaster that every time you saw it, you were kind of like, "Oh yes, that's the one."
That's actually been one of the most fun things about putting this in front of other people, is how much everyone has a different favorite, and like some of the feedback that I've got has just been so different than what my own personal experience. Like, oh, what's the point of meteors? They don't really seem to do that much. Meteors to me are the best. Like, I love just pinpoint accuracy, sniping a specific building. That was one of my favorite things making this game, was just like either sniping something with one meteor or building it up into a giant impact crater. And then other people like other things, and they really love the tornadoes or feel like the earthquakes really speak to them personally. So that's been really fun.
We have another question from Twitch from great username fartfish01. They're asking, do you plan on adding a multiplayer mode where one player is the city and the other is the natural disasters?
I'm gonna have to think on that one. That's a really interesting idea, and I could see some really fun things with that. Right now, the crux of the fun comes from like trying to outthink the city, right? So I could see where that would be interesting.
Seems like a fairly large development task, though, right? That's not a quick, it's not a quick ad. Yeah. How long have you been working on the game?
Well, it's been a pretty long and storied road, actually. So it started as a global game jam game in, I want to say like 2014. And it was just something that I fired off in a weekend, and it was fun, and it would like kind of prove the concept. And then it just sat on a shelf for a while I worked on other stuff. And then a few years ago, it just kind of spoke to me, and I decided to start toying with it again and found it to be more fun than ever. And for the last, I'd say since early 2019, so about two and a half years now, it's been full-time development on it. So cool. Yeah, so it released onto Steam Early Access just a couple of months ago. And right now my plan is to just like continue to support the development through early access, kind of take feedback from customers who, like this and have cool ideas, suggestions, stuff that I never thought of, and just kind of bring it to the finish line later this year.
Well, great. I love hearing that stuff originated from game jams. I think it's such a cool way to do a proof of concept and see who loves it and then decide what to spend your development time on that way versus, put your heart and soul into something for 5 years, show it to the public, and then nobody wants to play it. So that's really cool that you're involved in game jams.
Oh yeah, I'm a big game jammer.
Oh gosh, what's happening now? Oh, was that an earthquake? Was that Stephazoid's favorite?
Yes.
Bring it down.
Yeah, so this is a puzzle, one of the puzzle levels where you're kind of trying to knock down all these different targets. Right now, this fire target is in the shadow of a lightning rod. So each damage type has a defense against it. And in this case, a lightning rod just sucks up your lightning strikes and stops them from starting fires. And you don't want that, of course. So in this case, one of the best ways to work around that is just start the fire somewhere else and let it spread toward your target. One of the ways you can do that, fire just moves naturally in the wind direction. But one of the other things you can do like this is to just spawn a tornado and use that kind of fire whirl power that I discussed earlier to spread the fire downwind. And that's one of the key things that you need to, one of the key tools in your toolbox is to just remember all the ways these things interact and just use that to your advantage.
We've got a question from Piggy Bank Studios in chat who wants to know, how random is the city generation? Are there any handcrafted scenarios where a specific solution is intended or encouraged? Good question.
Yeah, for sure. So it's a mix, like anything where you say something's procedurally generated, the computer is responsible for a portion of it, but the designer ultimately decides what to let the computer let you see. So in a way, everything that you see is handcrafted. Nothing's given to you unless it's an interesting challenge in some way, especially for what you've done, because the game's actually learning how you play, and the cities will kind of learn from that and react to that as the game progresses. So you'll see if you favor one disaster over another, you'll see the late game stuff kind of try to tamp down on that. And that actually, in another mode that I'm going to show in a little bit, that really comes to fruition where if you're leaning too heavily on one thing, then the game will just shut you down. But yeah, there's also specific scenarios sprinkled throughout the game that have a certain set piece or a certain lesson that I just kind of wanted to shine a light on. And everyone's going to see a similar scenario. So everyone's a little bit personal. It's a little bit for you, for your eyes only, but also there's some common goalposts that everyone's gonna, milestones that everyone's gonna at least be able to share around the water cooler.
Very cool. All right, and is this a one-person team, or are you working with anybody else on the game?
Yeah, I'm a one-person studio. This is all me. I'm the designer. Classically, I've been a programmer for companies like Microsoft, Xbox, and Amazon Game Studios. For about 6 years now, I've been a full-time indie for myself as Rumor Games. And this is, I want to say, my third big release. I had a game called Build Down and a game called Voyager Grand Tour, which was actually at six number of years ago, six number 3, I think.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
Back in the day.
Mm-hmm.
What did you learn while working on, your previous titles that you were able to apply to this game when you're in progress working on this game?
Oh, wow, that's a complicated question. I want to say estimation skills, but probably not, because everything always runs long. Don't rely too much on like third-party software. Like that's a little too cynical, but one of the things when I was developing Voyager is I kept putting features into the game because some plugin manufacturer or somebody wanted me to, and then they would just go out of business. And so I was just like, not doing that anymore. You know what? I'm gonna make a game and I'm gonna sell it. It'll be a nice way to make a game, to make a business, and then I don't have to worry about ad company 87 going out of business.
Yeah.
Now, you mentioned during gameplay that the city itself, as it's growing and re-evolving, that it encroaches the trees, and the trees are a necessity for you to have this energy. Is there a point in which, if you don't combat this, that the city can just wipe out every amount of energy you can obtain?
Yeah, mostly that does happen mostly through like denial of area. So sometimes the city will just grow to cover all the land, and there's just nowhere for you to plant any more trees. So like you don't get energy from trees existing, you get energy from planting trees. And that's actually useful because I don't know if you've noticed, but the trees themselves are actually a tool in your toolbox too. You can use them to kind of like spread fire in different parts of the map, for example. So planting trees gets you that energy, and if the city grows too much or has certain defenses like factories that like block off an area from being able to plant trees, then you just kind of get backed into a corner. And that's especially important in one of the other modes that I'm going to show soon, which is the arcade mode, where the city just kind of grows itself endlessly, and your goal is to just get a high score in how many buildings you destroy. So that's like one of my favorite things in the whole game. But right now what we're seeing is actually really cool too. This is one of the megastructure levels. They're like the boss levels of the game. So each one is like a different building that has some sort of impact on the environment, and your goal is to stop it from being built before it gets built. And they like build their energy from how big the city is around them. And in this case, we just lost. This nuclear power plant got built, and then it's going to just serve to power an entire area, and like you're done.
Just massive building happening.
I love watching the tornadoes join together into uber tornadoes.
One of my favorite things too, for sure.
All we need is uber fire tornadoes, and then Meg will be completely ecstatic about the destruction.
Oh, amazing. Fire tornadoes sound like the best thing ever.
We have a question from chat. Is that a home shopping network style of upgrade system? I think that's a yes.
Oh, yes. I didn't even talk to that when it was happening. Yeah. So that's exactly what it is. You earn stars as you play the game, and as you get like better at the game, if you use fewer disasters in order to like achieve your goals, you get a better star rating. And then you get to cash in those stars for things like extra strikes or the ability to plant trees without clicking them individually. You just kind of like drag and paint. And the ability to control the wind direction, so you can just kind of drive the tornadoes around or the fire around as you see fit, which you might have seen that pop up. You just like select that little wind thing, and then you get to drive what I call the windicator to decide what the wind direction is. And drive them around.
That's really wonderful.
Thank you. Oh yeah, and right there, so you got to hit that. So I hit that billboard and got an extra strike. So one of the awesome features of the arcade mode is you can just jump right in. You don't have to unlock everything in the game in order to like see disasters at their most powerful. You can jump into this, and then these billboards pop up as you play, and if you hit them, you get that unlock just for the arcade mode for that gameplay session. So you can keep you can kind of see like everything the game has to offer in a real quick space. So that's a great way to like jump in and see, you know, if this is a good fit for you as like a gamer, because I think it will. When people don't play arcade mode and come away unhappy about Unnatural Disaster.
It looks very touch, maybe mobile friendly. Is this going to be on things like Switch, mobile, tablet?
That's a great question. It is on mobile actually already. iOS and Android are available right now. Steam Early Access is kind of where the testbed where we're playing with new features and responding to community suggestions. That stuff filters down to mobile over time. So like right now, mobile doesn't have the new sandbox mode that we're trialing in the Steam version, but it's out and you can play it, and it's a really fun way to just kill some time on a bus, I know.
I'm gonna download it.
On the subject of mobile, since that is one of the questions here, we did have a question in chat from Pego Pen. Would this game work with a touchscreen?
Oh, for sure. Actually, like I love playing on a touch. You know, just pinching and zooming and like rotating the camera around with your finger, it just feels super natural. So highly recommend it on mobile on a touchscreen. It works as well if you have a touch PC. The Steam version also has the same touch controls as well. So definitely check it out.
Oh.
You'll like it.
This might be too big of a spoiler. You can feel free not to answer this question. We have somebody from chat asking, is there a special disaster type once you combine all of the disasters together?
The supermassive uber destruction.
Well, let's see. So I think I'll answer that with a little bit of a redirect. So what we're watching right now is arcade mode, and one of the cool things about arcade mode is that it has this awesome set piece disaster to kind of put a button on your play session. So like, because the city's growing endlessly, you're going to eventually be overwhelmed. But every tree you plant in this mode powers up your set piece disaster, your kind of win button. And in this case, we're powering up this volcano. And every time we fill up that bar, we get a stronger volcano up to level 3. And once we hit that button, if we feel like the city's about to grow too big or whatever, you hit that button and it's gonna be just something else. So there's a number of different set pieces out. Like this is the one that's in the game right now, but we've had suggestions for things like hurricanes and kaiju and stuff like that that are all going to be considered for addition into this mode. And I think it'll be really cool.
That's awesome.
Would a kaiju still be considered a natural disaster? Does that still fit into natural disaster?
Well, it's pretty, I got my bases covered because it's called Unnatural Disaster, isn't it?
That is true. That is true. There we go. We're good to go then.
We are unfortunately going to have to wrap it up soon. Is there anything else you want to tell us about the game?
Yeah, I mean, definitely check it out on Steam and mobile when you have a chance. I think if you play along, you'll see that there's a lot of fun to be had, and a lot more message maybe than it's easy to get across in a chat like this. Right here, it's all action and cool destruction. But if you play the game, there's a bit of a message to it as well, which you could probably guess looking on, but keeping an eye out for the environment around us and maybe not letting, thinking about the way our consumption affects the world that we live in is a pretty important thing to me. And I think something that was important for me to include in this game too.
Yeah, bringing more attention to global warming and how our Earth that we live on impacts us, and we impact it, is a very noble message. So thank you for helping educate people about that.
Thank you. And I get to package it in a fun blow up some cities package. That's pretty cool too.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much, Kevin. It was great getting to check out this awesome game, and we really appreciate you taking the time to come show us. And thank you, Steph, for hanging out with us as well.
100%.
Thank you so much for having me.
Before we go, I want to